Welcome to the Integrate This EdTech podcast. Today we have a special guest with us, Stevie Frank. Stevie is a digital learning coach at Zionsville, Indiana, and has 15 years of educational experience. When she's not learning to become an educator for all students, she's marking off travels with her family. And while Jeremy and I love to catalog our guests' accomplishments for intros, one thing I'm not a huge fan of is it doesn't always encapsulate everything that someone has done in their experience throughout their teaching career. So I've seen Stevie in a number of interviews, including one with Dr. George Valenzuela. But Stevie, let's start with your background, because you didn't just start out as a digital learning coach, but you've had a lot of experiences. So maybe get us started with life before Zionsville, maybe.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to chat here. I was chatting with Jeremy before, a little bit before the show, about some of my bucket list travels. And so I think I am going to have to stop by again, the Lego store, when we pass through the Minneapolis area of Mall of America. I have to do that now. So yes, I actually started off as a fourth grade teacher in a different district than where I'm at now. And then I was like, okay, I'm getting bored. I'm a mastery at what I'm doing at this point. So now it's time to move. So I moved grade levels to fifth grade, and then I moved districts. And then I switched districts again, where I like to say I've kind of found my home now. So I live and I work in the district where my kids go. So I'm like, I've got the perfect recipe of everything right now, where I'm on most likely their calendar. I work a little bit more, longer hours than they do. But for the most part, we all sync up. So when they get a snow day, I get a snow day. So those things are super fun. So that is a little bit about me. I also got my master's education from Indianapolis, Indiana, at IU. So that was one of my fun things that I got to do. And it's actually in literacy and reading. It's not in technology. So a lot of people have that kind of misinformation about me, where they're like, oh, well, she's all tech. And I'm like, no, my pedagogy is a lot in reading. So a lot of times when you hear me speak, or if I'm presenting, I talk a lot about the pedagogy rather than just the tool. A lot of times the tool is the how, but I really like to get down into best uses and utilization of the tool, rather than just tech for tech's sake.
Yeah, on your website too, it actually will say it's like you have experience in literacy, and reading is a big thing that you've focused on, or had is clear if you look at your website and stuff too. So.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you're picking that up.
Well, and that's really, honestly, David and I also really didn't get our starts in education and technology either. Both of us were social studies teachers, actually, to start out with in the classroom, and I was there also taught in the school where my kids went to school. So I can totally relate to that experience that you're talking about, and yeah, that made snow days really enjoyable when they would come around, and I would get the day off with them as well. So yeah, that was all really unique, but I really love how you talk about focusing then on the pedagogy part of it first, and the technology, kind of becomes the how part. I think that's really a great way to look at it, I think. So, you kind of gave us some of the ideas of things here before you got into your current position. But can you tell us a little bit about the school that you work in, what your role is now in that capacity, and helping the people of your district, and the students, that are there as well?
Yeah, so I am a digital learning coach. I'm one of three. So there are three of us across the district. So we're very grateful for that. But I support three different schools in my district. I support the middle school and then two elementary schools. And so that we kind of conquer and divide. And then it's fun too, because then now it's the end of the year and the teachers have left. So now it's like, okay, we actually get to sync up. And I actually get to spend time in my cubicle, which is such a novel thing, because I'm like, I maybe stop by the ESC or Education Service Center maybe once a week. So it's really nice to kind of be in here and be collaborating with the amazing team here. So how I support teachers is either co-teaching with them, co-planning with them. Those are my I would say those are my two favorites parts of my job, but I also do offer different trainings and different professional development opportunities too as well when I'm asked and tasked to do, a full staff training on, a digital tool that we've just implemented. So, but I love that time in the classroom. I love to walk around and see what the students are doing, because now that I've taken a step back out of the classroom, so I'm 3 years out, I really miss that, like, okay, ooh, I have this really great idea and I want to do it with the kids. And then I'm like, oh, I don't like talking about it. And I'm sending my newsletters about it and I'm hearing people say, but I get the opportunity to go in, and when I co-teach with them, it's just like, okay, that's great. So I really enjoy being able to be bopping and hopping everywhere. It really fills my cup. Like I so enjoy my role. So this is such a great fit for me for sure.
Yeah, and collaboration is like it's such an essential part of because like you said, I mean, if you're not having opportunities like that, you're kind of just doing stuff on your own and sending out ideas. But have you found that with Zionsville, do you have quite a few opportunities where you're able to join those classrooms? I mean, sometimes we get teachers that like to keep the door closed pretty frequently. So do you find like and it sounds like it's a big district too, right? I mean that you have 3 digital learning specialists there. So do you find
Yeah.
that working with teachers is pretty frequent?
We have about 8,500 students, so we're not huge, which is great, but we're not, too small either. So it's kind of like a bigger, we get the best of both worlds, if you will, with that. And so what I really enjoy about the collaborative efforts of our district is that we're all like on the same mission and vision of, making sure that we are not necessarily test driven when it comes to taking a look at our pedagogy and, use of that, but we're really just looking more towards like what is best practice, and we're always thinking about the kid first. So a lot of times we're thinking about it through that lens of, okay, how will this benefit all of our students in Zionsville Community Schools, and then how can we meet those needs? And that is such a cool collaborative effort. All of our administrators, so our CIO here, also CTO, if you're more familiar with the Chief Technology Officer instead of Chief Innovative Officer, he was actually a principal at an elementary school. So a lot of times what I hear from people in my role have with it, like a rub with their district, is they're like, our CTO doesn't get it. Like, I'm trying to do this innovative thing and he's more maybe on the tech side, if you will. And that's something that I'm really grateful for here in Zionsville. So all of our administrators have been principals. So they understand the pedagogy, the how, which is really cool. So then it makes it my job, I guess, so much easier because I'm like, oh, great. Like we're all hopping and bopping and, sharing ideas, and we're all excited about what we're doing here. And especially even how we entered the world of I think was pretty revolutionary and pretty innovative. So a lot of districts were like, close it down. In fact, our networking guy had blocked the site. And then we were like, hey, I saw the site was blocked. Why was that? And he was like, it's Chat GPT. And we were like, yeah, like we're open again. He's like, oh, these, crazy innovators again. But those were some really cool decisions and cool thoughts that we've been able to have and kind of cultivate here in Zionsville.
Yeah, so that's definitely challenging when you don't have the support of administrators. So it's really kind of great to hear that that collaboration exists, amongst the teaching staff, amongst the administrators, the instructional coaching, digital coaching side of things. That when that all comes together, how successful that can really be in impacting student learning. But what are some of the things that you would point to as some of your successes in the last, say, 3 years or so?
So great question. And then I realized I was like, I never answered his question. So I lovingly got to follow the footsteps of 2 other amazing digital coaches. So there used to be 2, and then I was the third one added. And really what I noticed with their relationship with teachers is that they were just kind of used to the coaching model. So a lot of times that really helped. But because Zionsville was so based in relationships, my first year on the job, I just was like, I'm going to build relationships. So that was my goal. If I came into any place or any classroom, or if I would, I tried to eat in a staff lounge, I just tried to be visible. And being visible is one person divided by 3 schools, plus I have administrative things that I need to do here. That kind of made it, difficult, but I did my best. And so I think cultivating those relationships really helped. People approach me more and say like, "Hey, okay, I needed some help." And I would have to say the biggest thing that I hear, so if you find yourself as a new coach listening, is I never love to judge, right? So anytime I come into a teacher and if they have a question, even if it's like, oh my gosh, this is such an easy answer, you think in your head, or if you're like, I can't believe that this is what's going on, always lead in with kindness and benevolence of whatever teacher you're working with, because everybody is on their own journey with tech. And if you have found yourself in a technology role, it is because you're an expert, and not everybody has the privilege to be one of those. So not everybody is you. And so trying to find those moments to be like, I don't know how many times they're like, oh my gosh, I know you're probably like, oh, Stevie, why do you have so many tabs? And I'm like, no, I will help you in your Google browser be able to open up those tabs every single time. So you do restart your computer more. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's so helpful. So meeting the teachers where they're at and where their needs are. And not even teachers, everybody. I worked with preschool staff. I've worked with lunchroom staff, just anybody that needs help at any time. I think that's huge.
Yeah, and I think, you touched on AI here slightly, and then we can pivot that way if that's where we want to go here, David. But I think one of the things that you said to me is really valuable, and to me is also the reason why I don't foresee a time where AI will replace teachers in the classroom. And I think it's exactly what you said. It's the relationship part of it, right? And you talk more about relationship with the role that you have as the digital coach with the educators, and that can include the kitchen staff and the bus drivers and everybody else as an educator, I think, as long as they work for that school. But at the same time, those relationships are something that AI can't do, at least in a healthy way. And I think that's a really important thing to point out here as well too. And I think you're exactly right to focus on those relationships. And it is really fun when you go in and you give someone just a simple little thing, that will totally like, oh wow, I didn't know you could do that. Like, I want to open a new document and I type doc.new and it comes up, but I don't have to go to Drive to open it, and it's those little things that, you've hooked that person. They're going to be much more likely to listen to you and the next thing that you come to them with. So that's really neat.
Agreed. I love, and I've had the privilege of being able to listen to a lot of amazing speakers speak on AI, and so I know that going to conferences is a privilege. It was something I listened to on Alana Leone's podcast that she had. She was just talking about that yesterday, and something that I also want to make sure to know is that we as a society have a chance right now to say, with the ethical use of AI, where is AI's role? Is it that relationship? Is it that therapist? Is it that? Or is it more of a productivity app? Is it working smarter, not harder situation? So I think there's just some pause points that I think sometimes we're just, I think when AI first came out, everybody was like, use it, use it, use it, no matter what you're using it for. And now we're really starting to dig into that. Let's have the considerations. Let's teach into AI literacy. Should we be calling it a she or a her? Should we be, anamorphalizing that? So those are just some of the things that have been rolling around in my brain that, again, I've been able to listen to so many amazing speakers talk about it, which is how I've been able to formulate some of my thoughts and opinions on that topic.
We're talking with I would say too, obviously we're talking with you, and that's great because you've kind of grown and been recognized for some of the work you're doing. But all these conversations that Jeremy and I have had with yourself and then several others as well around AI, it's been really interesting to see how people are taking that all in. And we work with a ton of schools and we see the different responses. And as you mentioned, like with your school, it first got blocked, and then you had to kind of coax them into, well, we can actually use it for these things. But there's been a lot of, just in the last couple months here, there has been much more of an emphasis I've seen with AI in terms of rather than just grabbing, this tool or that tool, there's been much more of a focus on foundational concepts. And so AI literacy is getting talked about a lot. Like teachers need to know what these systems are and how to use them properly. And that should translate into, it doesn't really matter what tool you use as long as your foundational concepts are correct. And then there's a student element as well. So when you've been looking at what has come out, and I wanted to ask you specifically about the AI literacy framework that just came out. Do you have any thoughts on what how that benefits teachers, maybe in your own district or just in general? Like what is that AI literacy framework going to do for them to empower them to actually be able to teach students effectively about AI?
I love that question. As somebody who is boots on the ground with public school educators, that is not something our educators are ready for. And I think there's a big misconception of something that I notice a lot with thought leaders of AI. And I am here for that because I think we need people that are shoveling the pathway and saying, this is the direction we need to go. And I'm so grateful for those really I don't know, just innovative thought leaders that are being intentional with the work that we're doing. And that document, when it came out, I was so excited and nerded out on it and sent it to everybody, all my nerdy people, and was like, "This is so great," because I think we do need to be moving more intentionally with that. But our teachers are still I'm just still trying to get teachers to use AI. So I think that's also it's very helpful to kind of like take a step back and to be like, okay, because sometimes I'm like I get asked to speak at different conferences and, I'm like, do you want me to go the AI literacy route or the productivity? And it's a lot of it is surrounded by productivity for right now. They're like, we're just trying to get teachers to use the thing so we can get used to it. And I think that is still true today. Now, anytime I speak on AI, I always talk about the considerations in AI. I used to call it when I first started presenting and on AI a couple years ago. And now it's more, you know, AI literacy and taking a look at some of those considerations. So I always talk about it. I always make sure that teachers understand that that's a thing, that's a topic that they should be thinking about. But it's definitely, I think it's still like teachers are still getting used to it themselves. And so if we can start moving into the student use in meaningful ways, rather than just teacher usage, I think that's going to be something where we're really going to start to see an impact in education into the right way. And so it's going to be an interesting year. When AI first came out, it was just like, I don't even know what this is. And now, when I've asked teachers, how many of you are utilizing it? And, we have a dashboard. We have a MagicSchool AI enterprise. We wrote a grant for that and got that for our teachers. And so that was something. So we have a dashboard so we can see the usage. And it's not as much as we had once thought. We're like, oh, everybody's going to use it. It's going to be great. But really what we're starting to see is teachers using it. They're getting comfortable with it. And so that's step one. Step two is going to be student usage. And then I think step three is going to be that AI literacy component. Now, that definitely should weed down absolutely into those areas, but those are some really big thoughts and topics. And I have my thoughts on those things too, because it's like, not everybody's here. Like everybody thinks we're here. And those in the AI space are here, but the rest of everybody, and I mean educators, are not quite yet. But our student population, they are absolutely there, utilizing it every day.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting trying to make the connection between like informing teachers about things that students are already knee deep in and doing,
Yeah.
So that's been an interesting aspect too. But
I know I found when I have led presentations on AI for teaching staff, I think one of the best things that I have done is to model for teachers ways that I use it personally as well as professionally. Like I even had AI ChatGPT help me write a cookbook because I kept asking it for so many different recipes that all turned out so great. Then I had it help me collaborate and put them curated together into a Google Doc cookbook. But Do you find things like that work to help bring that reluctant teacher on board to using AI, or do you have other ideas, strategies, tips that kind of help bring people to see the positive uses of AI, both maybe also then towards that professional way?
Absolutely. And as a school district, 2 years ago, we started the school year off with having a artificial intelligence, or it was this year. It felt so long ago. So at the beginning of this year, we all made sure that we met with our assistant superintendent and our innovative officer, and we were like, okay, let's all get on the same page, and we're all going to give these back to school AI sessions with all of our teachers, and we're going to talk about all of these different considerations to have now. I know you had Matt Miller on as well. And so he's a great thought leader when it comes to this topic. And so I showed his levels of use of AI, which starts from like, if you're going to say no AI in your classroom, you have to be specific in each assignment. So, for example, are you saying no spell check? Are you saying, you can't use Grammarly? Can you use it as a way to help organize? Can you use it as a thought partner? So you really have to be explicit with the different levels of use. And when we showed that infographic to our staff, that really, I think for some of our staff, like clicked, where they were like, yeah, some of it is okay. It's fine if they go to it as a thought partner, as they would go to Google or they would go to a peer, so some of them were starting to draw the line a little bit further down than maybe where they were once thinking they were going to be drawing that line. So I think that was a big aha for my teachers to see like, oh, okay, like some use of AI is okay. And as a former English teacher myself, I was like, will you please use the spell check? If you are turning it in and it is squiggled under red, here's what this means. And here's how you should use it to help edit your documents. And I think, some of those examples to teachers I know are definitely helpful. I've definitely been a lot more intentional when it comes to my productivity tips, is because I have to think about, is it really going to save time? Do we really need to go to ChatGPT to answer that email, or is it just going to take more time than that humanity piece of you really connecting with that kid or parent? Again, I've wanted to send emails sometimes to teach or to parents or to students, and I'm like, I don't know how this is going to be taken, and I need to tone it down maybe a little bit more or make it shorter. Then those are great uses. But Saba Kidwai, she's amazing thought leader around AI, and she has a quote where she's like, prompt the human before the AI. And I think that is such a great way and great thought process that I've been trying to lead forward with too, as well. So I'm gonna have to steal the cookbook idea though. That's solid gold.
And like you talked about when we were chatting beforehand, I share everything for free. So
Yeah.
take it and run with it. I'll share you a copy of the Google Doc here before we're done.
Yay. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
And Stevie, you've talked a little bit about professional development, and you've mentioned some thought leaders like Saba or Matt Miller. If you're looking at some of the PD that you've done in the past, and so it doesn't have to, necessarily be AI, but what have been the most effective things that you've done with educators that you definitely get more of this clicked with them, this is working for them, maybe like a specific example of things that you've done in an individual session, and just thinking about if there's somebody else other than Jeremy and I, or maybe Jeremy and I, maybe we need some improvement tips as well. But how can those that are working with educators improve on their PD, and how can schools improve on opportunities for professional development? So there's a couple questions in there, but what is the most? I think it boils down to, what is the most effective things that you've done or have seen?
I love this question. I definitely think a lot of times that I've attended a lot of sessions myself where we need to start with the pedagogy. So we have experience with Microsoft Flip. Tools can come and go, but that pedagogical practice of amplifying student voice, that has not gone away. We just have to replace the tool. So I think a lot of times leading in with professional development of like, here's why we're doing this. And here's how this connects to best practices. So a lot of times when I start a session, I will talk about the SAMR model, which I felt I know it gets some heat at different times. Some people are like, I don't know, but I still really like it. I still really support the SAMR model and the depth of knowledge. So when I'm talking about the level 4 depth of knowledge, if I'm hitting on my level 4 depth of knowledge, if I'm in the redefinition phase of the SAMR model, that typically will start to yield itself to better uses of tech and not just tech for tech's sake. Because a lot of times I will get, I use Microsoft Bookings as a coach. And so I'll get somebody that'll be like, I want to use this tool. And I'm like, that's so great. Okay, what are you doing in the classroom already? Like, let's really fuse that into your curriculum rather than it just being off here to the side. And then those are my biggest wins with those teachers is they're like, oh, wow, like, I don't just have to, like, I can assess this. I don't just, this is my assessment. It's like, yes, it is. And so those I would have to say are one of the most important components. Definitely make sure that you lead forward with that pedagogy, because a lot of things that I see us using as just replacement tools, like instead of doing the worksheet on a computer, instead of doing it on paper, I'm going to do it on a computer. Like, unless you're talking about accessibility with that component, and that's why you want to move to the tech, like, why are you using the tech in meaningful ways? So I think those components is what I always try to hit with teachers, and always give them something that they feel like they can do when they leave. Like when I go to teach my class tomorrow, because the job of an educator is one of the most difficult jobs and oversensitizing. I've experienced middle school as well, and that's a whole different gamut. So I definitely would have to say, always think about that with your teachers too, where you're like, here's something you can do tomorrow. Here's a little bit get them into the tool. If you're talking about it, get them clicking around, and then be there as a support. I would say those would be my biggest tips.
Yeah, and I'm a big advocate too of hands-on. Like it doesn't really do too much good to, stand at the front and talk about how like Magic School works, right? I mean, being able to actually get your hands on it and play around with it is extremely important for educators.
So one of the things recently is you were named EdTech Magazine's one of 30 K-12 IT influencers to follow in 2025. Kudos.
Thank
Uh,
you. Thank you.
yeah. Has that recognition influenced any of your work that you have done or any opportunities that have come about because of that recognition within an EdTech community?
So interesting question. I'm a very humbled person. So honestly, my answer is just like, no, I don't think so. I'm like, I don't think anybody reads those things. But as somebody who is, kind of in the marketing world and in all of that, social media and everything, I do think that it has an impact and an effect on some of the great work that so many people are doing. And so when I looked at that list and I looked at that, who I was named next to, that was such a privilege to me because I look up to a lot of those people. And then I was like, well, maybe people look to me for that too, which also made me really dig deep down into like before you post anything, before you put anything out there, like let's talk about your digital footprint. Really be intentional with everything that you're saying. So it definitely has. I've been asked to do my first keynote, which is very exciting for me. I am definitely going to have to feed into, and I'm every time I'm watching a keynote now, I'm watching it with a different lens. So some of those opportunities I don't think I would have been able to have without some of that recognition. And I'm just so grateful that there are people out there that have seen what I've done and have taken it. I'm like, wow, okay, great. Like I wanted to give back to the community that gave me so much. And I think that is what is amazing about the professional learning network of educators. And I can speak mostly to the ed tech because that's the world I'm in, is I don't feel like there's anybody unapproachable. You can go up to Matt Miller, who has, tens of thousands of followers, hundreds of thousands, depending on which platform you see him on. And he is the nicest guy. And everybody will say that. He'll be like, oh, yeah, like he will help build you up and amplify you just as much. And be humble about it, all in the same regard. Because at the end of the day, we're just all educators trying to help kids. Like, that's all we're trying to do. So we're trying to find that best practice. We're trying to find those components. If some of them can turn it into a career, I think that's great, but I think sometimes from my people in my professional learning network, that's their end goal And I'm like, that's amazing. Your heart's in the right spot. And if you can figure out a way to monetize that, like, I'm here for you. I will purchase your book.
And I've found it extremely refreshing. Just being able to have some of the conversations that we've had. It's been very easy to reach out to some folks about like these interviews, or even just exchanging some messages on LinkedIn or things like that. So it's you're definitely right on that. It's very open and a great community, I would say. So you had just mentioned like keynoting and things like that. You just spoke at Spark Summit, which I'm not sure if Jeremy knows this, but Jeremy likes Harry Potter, right? So, and there's definitely some Harry Potter themes with the Spark Summit. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that was just yesterday, right?
It was, yes.
Yeah.
So Nadine Gilkison, she puts that on for her district, and she's amazing. I've just had the opportunity to be on a board with her, the ICE affiliate, or the ISTE affiliate here in our state of Indiana, ZICE, and she and I worked on the board together and completed a conference together too as well. So it was so fun to be able to rub shoulders with her and get into her brain about that. But so this was her district, and so she put it on. She always loves a good theme. Last year was Taylor Swift, and this year's Harry Potter. But I myself am not, I know, Jeremy, don't hate me for this one, but I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan. I'm not against it. I just was like, where it fell in my life, I was just like, okay. But we are reading the books to my sons. And this is, you're gonna laugh, and I'm gonna tell him I brought this up. He's gonna be like, I don't know why you did this, Stevie. But whenever he reads it aloud, I fall asleep. And it's not because I'm bored. It's just simply because I'm like, oh, I don't have to do anything but listen to a book, and then it's just inevitable.
I
But
think
that,
because of the ages my kids are, I kind of grew up with them a little bit
yes.
more. At that time, that was, a new book would just come out, and they were little at the time, but they just like mom and dad reading to them too. So that was part of it. But
Well,
I
was your
remember
wife
it then.
able to stay awake?
Well, I was doing most of the reading because they were still kind of little, but I think they just
Yeah.
love mom and dad reading. But I made that connection with them then too. And then, of course, my son gets big into Legos, and then we've got to buy every sort of, Lego Star Wars, Lego Hogwarts, Lego everything, And so
Oh,
it was just kind of cool.
we're in like the Minecraft phase right now, because Steve's
Mm,
Love a Chicken is definitely being sang with my children. I don't know if anybody else resonates to that, but
Yeah.
that's like my ages. So all of that being said, I love Harry Potter. I think it's a great, J.R. Tolkien with her, way to really get maybe more reluctant readers into reading. Like, I am here for that. But the conference was amazing. When I was asked to kind of present, I was like, can I just do one? Because I just want to attend. I really want to soak in and just sit in some of these amazing, great sessions that the other 6 conferences I'm going to, I'm all day presenting. And I don't oftentimes get that opportunity. So that was definitely a time where I was like, can I just present one? And then I was able to play around with a presentation that I've done before, and I wanted to add more AI literacy into it. So that was the perfect platform. I really enjoyed it because it was, a great group of educators that were hungry, and, they were excited about it. They were like, this was free for me. And I'm like, that's great that she gets her educators so hyped up and, willing to come back after school has ended. And so kudos to her for the great work that she's doing.
yeah, that sounds awesome. So kind of connecting here with teachers here a little bit. Recently, I had seen that you had done some co-teaching with a 5th grade class that were doing some podcasting, right? And so since we are on a podcast here now, um, what was that experience like? Do you think you have any future podcasters out of the 5th graders that you were working with that David and I might need to be concerned about as competition?
So I love student podcasting. That is where I really started my platform, was on student driven podcasting. And I started with my class that was in the year 19, listen to that. We were in 2019 and 2020. So everybody remembers what happens in that year. So when I first started doing that, it was in November. And that was my first time I ever tried student podcasting with students. And we went ahead and went for the NPR Student Podcast Challenge, because why not? If I'm going to do something, I'm like, we're go big or go home. So we did that. And actually, one of my students won an honorable mention. So, I mean, talk about where you're like, oh, wow, so much momentum, so much great energy around what's going on. So I've been doing student podcasting since that time. I've always done it either in my classroom or when I went out of the classroom. That was my teacher bestie that I went in. So she still continued on the torch. And so I was like, you have to invite me back. And she's like, well, I know you're so busy. I was like, oh, no. Like, I want to see the student podcasting. It is one of the most transformative tools that I see when you talk about building relationships with students. There's some reluctant kids that you're going to have come into your classroom and they're not going to connect with you in any way, shape, or form. But if you're like, hey, we're doing podcasting, that increased engagement, you're able to make that connection with them and then in a different way. So I've had several student connections that I've been able to really deepen that relationship because I was labeled the reading teacher. And some kids come through my door and they're like, I'm not good at reading. I don't want to read. And sometimes by middle school, you're like, it's not just, oh, you haven't found the right book anymore. Like that doesn't work for everybody. But what I really enjoyed was the fact that these students were like, oh, we're doing something different. We're looking around. And I really enjoyed that, digging into my students and digging into what they're passionate about and handing them a mic and being like, here's your microphone, talk about it. But that was one of the most amazing. I love doing student podcasting for sure. Yes, that is my baby.
Just what a great way for kids to be able to express themselves, to share their learning, to share their passions, at the same time. Just really, really impactful. I think that's something they'll definitely remember too.
Yeah, and I like all those opportunities too, just because we don't really live in just like the submit your paper world anymore. There's so many different methods which students can show their work, their understanding of things through presentations and audio formats, video formats. It's all really interesting. So there was another one that we saw too in looking at some of the work that you've done with this was I think a different project altogether, but because of with living in Indiana and you have the Indianapolis 500, there was a project that you did with some fifth graders that was centered around that event. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. So Indy 500 it is like a month-long celebration here in Indiana. I have been to probably like 15 or 20 of them. And then finally I had to tell my grandpa, I was like, okay, I'm done. You have great tickets, but I'm done. Like you take other people, that is fine. But it is such an amazing event. And a lot of our kids and families, they'll either be a part of like racing. So either like part of their family works in racing or something of that sort. So there's deep rooted connections here in Indiana. And so we had them write a script. So I had the students, I taught every single fifth grader at Zionsville West Middle School. And one day, like I was exhausted after that. But we had 30 minutes because they just went through different pit stops of the day. And I was just one of them with my teacher bestie. And so when I was like, okay, I have 30 minutes. I want them to do animate to audio in Adobe Express, but I know that's not a ton of time to really lean into writing. So all week they had been working on researching one of their favorite drivers. So I was like, well, what if they plugged in all of their research that they had done, not in AI, plugged in all of their research and then threw it into MagicSchool AI. And I uploaded the rubric and all of my expectations for them and said, write a 1-minute script being this driver, about this driver. And then once they did that, then they would just read it aloud to animate to audio. So a lot of the kids turned themselves into mouths. And then some of them turned themselves into avocados. Some of them turned themselves into popcorn. But again, it was kind of one of that component where I talked about with Microsoft Flip going away. Amplifying student voice is amazing. And anytime you can do that, you just got to find the right tool. And so that's why I used MagicSchool AI as a way to make that script writing quicker and more efficient. But then we also coupled it with that fun project. And then through Adobe Classrooms, they were able to see everybody else's. So in that Adobe Classroom that I had that assignment, every student was able to see all fifth graders on there, and then they had the time of their life in there. So that was definitely top tier, one of the most fun projects I've done all year. So thank you for pointing that out and let me talk about it. That was great.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you have so many of those things on your LinkedIn, probably other places too, but that's where I've come across some of them. So it's fun to watch.
Yeah, that's just great to hear you share some of these examples because I think those are the things that will spark an idea in someone else, and they're going to find a way to adapt what you've done, and totally make it their own about their own content they teach or age level of kids they have. So you mentioned Matt Miller a couple of times, and I know when we had him on too, we talked about the tomorrow glasses or the future glasses that he talks about here. So, and I know we're coming up on the end of our time, but what do you see out there on the horizon? Put on those tomorrow glasses or those future glasses. Where is EdTech headed in the next, whether it's pedagogically or whether it's the technology? What direction is that going, say, in the next 3 to 5 years?
Oh, wow. So I get a crystal ball experience here.
Yes, you do.
So I would have to say AI is either going to force education to change practices and change assessments, or we're going to just continue to see this old school way of teaching that really hasn't changed in a long time. What do I mean? I mean, a lot of times I was still having my students write the same essays that I was asked to write, which is why I pivoted to podcasts, because I was like, I'm giving information, it's organized, we're writing, I'm hitting the same standards, but it's in a different way. And we have to really rethink how we're doing things in order to, I think, see a bigger change and see more evidence of learning and stop seeing just evidence of cheating with AI. So we've either really got to lean into like, okay, if the AI can do this, maybe I don't have them do AI. Maybe I don't have them do that assignment, right? Maybe I have them rethink about it. So, like for instance, those animate to audio figurines that we did, that's AI proof. So that's kind of where I've leaned in with my teachers, where I'm like, AI can't do that for the student. I used AI, right, to help write the script and to help do that, but it didn't do the research for them. So where does AI fit in? Where does it not fit in? And how are you going to assess? I think that if we can really start to, as educators, grasp onto that concept, change our assessments, then I think we can start leading into this more innovative direction. We'll see. I'll have to play this back in like 3 to 5 years and see how we did.
Let's see how accurate it
We'll,
was.
we'll hold you to that too.
Yes, but they've been saying, and even before AI, they were like the 5-paragraph essay is dead, which I know is a hot topic. And I was an English teacher. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if AI really starts to change that or not. So we'll see.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned this earlier, but I'm a big fan too of like looking at assessments and things that students are doing. There's ways that you can fold AI into the different aspects of a project that don't totally take, we hear the term cognitive offload, where there's no struggle involved for the student. And I think some of the most interesting work being done right now is just with the assessments and ways that you can still maintain those things, but still allow students to use tools like AI. So there's definitely opportunities there. But I know we're running short on time here, and so I wanted to give you an opportunity. What upcoming work or dates, appearances, anything that you have coming up that you'd like to highlight, and where can people follow your work? Where are you most posting your things? I know LinkedIn is one, but
Absolutely. So professionally, I am on LinkedIn and Twitter X, also on Blue Sky as well. I reserve my Instagram and Facebook for personal use. Nobody wants to see pictures of my kids every day. That's for the family and friends. And then I post a lot on my resources on steviefrank.com as well. And I'm going to be presenting next Wednesday and next Thursday at some Indiana conferences. And I always post where I'm going to be at, definitely on those different profiles of LinkedIn and X. So thank you for letting me share some of my stuff and what I've got going on.
yeah, definitely. And thanks for joining us. We'll be sure to put all of the resources so that our viewers can access those and see some of the work that you're doing in our show notes that we put out. So, Stevie, thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate it, and look forward to hopefully talking to you again sometime.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you all sharing your time. It is a precious commodity you can never get back. So thank you for having me on.
Thanks.